So here we are again, 3 months in to what are unprecedented times, times of incredible change and uncertainty. And perhaps it's easy at this time to become somewhat complacent that things may return to normal, or to become fearful that things will never return to normal. And so we stand at a pivotal time, a pivotal time not just in terms of the world, worldly structures and our daily lives, but also our state of consciousness. I've spoken about developing spiritual resilience before. Spiritual resilience by rooting ourselves in unshakable presence and unshakable openness. This is a time, and this is an invitation for us to really remember that. So let's explore what that means. I've also spoken a lot about the nature of awakening, the nature of the fully lived experience of awakening, not as a merely transcendent state, a state in which the human realm is denied or rejected or erased in some way, but about the full embodiment of awakening, of awakened consciousness, as it is lived, as it is breathed, as it flows into your everyday interactions. This is the bifurcation point, the point at which we have some kind of choice. It's not a choice from the ego self, but a choice from the deepest knowing that recognizes that where we stand in ourselves and collectively is a splitting of the worlds. We could call that a time of great awakening, or the potential for awakening. And this is where the embodiment of awakening comes into reality, because it's no longer a case of enlightenment in the sense of becoming an all-knowing, all-seeing super being who perhaps becomes a spiritual teacher or a spiritual guru. It's about each of our lives. It's about our life here and now. The awakening is available here and now. What does that mean? That means the bifurcation point, the splitting into two. We can carry on in the habitual ways of reactivity, fear, which is all essentially unconsciousness, allowing the momentum of our lives to operate from an automatic knee-jerk reaction. Yeah, the momentum of our personal karma, or the momentum of our personal conditioning. In that we have no real free will. We are subject to the laws of the past, or the actions of the past. And in a world that is seemingly fearful both in the polarization that's happening, fearful in the uncertainty and chaos, fearful in its projections into the future, we're offered a very potent, a very powerful opportunity to not respond with the same fear that drives the unconscious reactivity of ego self. So it's both a personal issue and a collective issue. The other road, that's one road, to continue in the same way, to go back to normal. Normal being unconsciousness. Normal seeking gratification for the self, comfort, security. Even the search for enlightenment is often a gratification for the self. The other road is the road of the true awakening. The other road is to move in our lives, to move in the world. In other words, to make decisions or choices or take actions from a place of non-reactivity, from a place of the deeper knowing in us. The deeper knowing in us is the knowing of our true nature as that unshakable openness, as that unshakable presence. That doesn't mean we become without feeling. It doesn't mean that everything is static and perfect. It means we are rooted in that which is true. And we do not move. We do not respond or react. In other words, we do not give our allegiance to the movement of mind that makes decisions or takes actions or comes to conclusions from a place of agitation. Where there is agitation, there is violence. There is opposition. There is the attempt to control ourselves, to control our feelings, or to control the world, to control our lives, to control the future. There is violence in that. We're seeing that in the world now, but it starts from here. So when we give our allegiance unconsciously to that agitation, and then we act from that, we are operating in the same old paradigm of consciousness that has created this world. So again, this doesn't mean that we don't have feelings. Feelings of fear may come up, feelings of anxiety, feelings of depression, despair, helplessness. That's all fine. There's no avoidance of what is felt, of what appears in consciousness. But the difference in the two roads is that when there are these waves, just as the waves on the ocean in this meditation we just were in, we don't move from that place. We don't come to a conclusion about those waves. We simply rest lightly with them, softly, with no control, with no attempt to fix or get rid of. And we wait. In that waiting, a certain openness comes. Yeah? When I say openness and when I say presence, it's important to know they are one and the same thing. It doesn't sound like it. Very often we think of openness as some kind of passive state, a state of vulnerability, a state of weakness perhaps, a state of just allowing everything to happen to me and I have no choice in that. That's not what I mean by openness. Openness and presence are two sides of the same coin. Very often when we think of presence, we think of some kind of strength and some kind of stoicness and some kind of mindfulness. No, they're two sides of the same coin. Let me try and expand on this. In openness, and I'm speaking of the openness in your depth, the depth of your true nature, the depth of your innermost, the depth of your heart, the depth of your being. It's always open. That openness is awareness itself, is consciousness itself. It's the open space that is always here as the backdrop to everything. It's your true self. This openness in your innermost isn't jumping around, coming to a conclusion, isn't attempting to control reality. It's simply here, open, feeling, sensing, allowing, listening, tasting the texture of what is here. It's not asleep, it's not passive. It's passive in the sense of being still. There's a deep quietness here. It's quiet because it's listening. You can't really listen if there is noise, if there is agitation, if there is violence, if there is conflict. This openness is an unconflicted state, an undivided state. That undivided state is who you are always, here. Therefore, that openness is scintillating with presence. It is presence itself. Presence is openness. When there is presence, when you are rooted in presence, when you have fallen into presence, you are simply here with what is. That is openness. It's not a focusing of awareness onto an object. It's an opening of awareness, which allows everything to be sensed, to be felt, and not to be avoided. Just here, just this, fully present in the bare bones of this. So presence and openness are one and the same thing. In that presence, in that openness, you are unshakable. And on the surface, the mind and the emotions may be pulling in different directions, may be chattering. There are narratives. Yeah? But when you know this, when you bring your allegiance to this, when you turn towards this, in the midst of the chaos, in the midst of the fear, in the midst of the uncertainty, and only you can do this, it's a choice to turn towards the surface or turn towards the deep, here and now. Yeah? when you fall into this openness and presence, you don't react from the surface. You wait. You hang out in the discomfort, even in the unbearability when there is an intense emotion or feeling. You hang out. You wait. You bear the unbearable as openness. You are present without getting lost in the past or getting lost in the future. Future dreams, future hopes, future expectations, future ideas of how it's going to be, how it should be, or past comparisons, past, it's always a comparison with the past. It was better or it was worse. Yeah? Just here. It's you. You have the choice to step lightly into this and this and this. And even if there is movement and turbulence, this is your unshakability. This is where you can listen to a deeper intelligence. There is no intelligence, true intelligence, when you move in the world from a place of agitation. All that's happening there is the repetition of old patterns. There is true intelligence when you move from inner quietness, from inner stillness. You wait. You wait until there is stillness. You wait until the impulse, the knee-jerk reaction has abated. And then a more true impulse will move you. This is how we create a new world, a new state of consciousness, and a new world. It's about finding peace, knowing peace. We can't find peace, but we can know peace. We know peace in the midst of chaos, in the midst of a world falling apart, whether it's our personal world or our collective world, where there is no certainty. There never was any certainty. There's no certainty to your life, to how the future will unfold. There never was any certainty, but we had ideas about certainty. And now those ideas are getting challenged, becoming shattered. And so it's like, oh, there's more uncertainty. Well, it always was this way. It's just highlighted now, intensified. So here we are, given the most powerful opportunity to listen to a deeper intelligence, to return to our true sovereignty. When we react from agitation, when we react from fear, we move away from our true sovereignty. And in that way, we are controlled. We are controlled by our own thinking, which isn't always our own thinking. They're thoughts that have been implanted through conditioning, personal and collective conditioning. So we're controlled by thoughts and we're controlled by the world. by the opinions and beliefs and paradigms. When we move from our true sovereignty, we are not controlled. We are listening to the natural intelligence of life. When we are not controlled, there is a peace, because we are not subject to the forces that are not our own. So, here is the paradox. Amidst the turbulence, personal turbulence or collective turbulence, are we willing? Are we willing to know this peace that is always here? And when an intense emotion or anxiety or fear arises, do we create a battle with that? Do we create more violence and agitation towards that? Because that's what usually happens. Where there is fear, where there is anxiety, where there is perhaps a sense of helplessness or despair, then we go to war with that. We are violent towards that and say, well, I've lost it now. I need to get rid of this so I can find that peace again. But here's the paradox. How can we just be soft with that? How can we be light even with the turbulence? How can we end the war all the way in the whole of the human experience? How can we be the sky when the weather is stormy? And more than how can we be that, are we willing to be that? Are we willing to know that? That's the bifurcation point. It's not how to, it's am I willing to? Am I willing, truly willing to know this? Or do I love the agitation and the reactivity so much? Because even though there may be complaints that I don't want this inner war anymore, I don't want this inner agitation anymore, if that's what you're giving your allegiance to, then that's what you're valuing. You must value the truth of your innermost, the openness of your innermost, the presence of your innermost. You must value that more than anything else.